Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous.
Gene Hackman's passing wasn't just the end of an era. It was the beginning of a mystery. A Hollywood icon who had retreated into quiet seclusion, his departure unearthed a financial puzzle that no one expected. What seemed like a straightforward inheritance quickly unraveled into a web of hidden investments, secret accounts, and an estate far more complex than anyone had imagined. His fortune, estimated at around $8 million, turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. For years, Hackman had lived away from the spotlight, preferring the solitude of Santa Fe over the chaos of Hollywood. With no social media presence or public appearances, he was almost a ghost, a legend who had walked away from fame. His final years were spent writing novels, cycling through dusty trails, and living in a home that gave no indication of immense wealth. But behind the scenes, he was orchestrating something much bigger. When his family expected to settle his estate, they were met with a series of documents that told a different story. His official will, written in 2001, listed only modest assets: a house, a bank account, and a vintage Hudson Hornet. The declared amount seemed shockingly low for a man who had starred in some of Hollywood's biggest films. But when investigators dug deeper, they found records that painted a different picture: real estate holdings, stock investments, and offshore accounts spread so widely that piecing them together was like solving a riddle with missing clues. Hackman had quietly built a financial empire. His earnings from films like Superman, where he made $2 million in 1978, worth over $9 million today, and The French Connection, $100,000 in 1971, were just the beginning. By the 1990s, he was making millions per role, with box office bonuses and long-term royalties continuously adding to his fortune. And yet, much of this wealth remained undisclosed, hidden behind layers of financial maneuvering. As investigators traced the assets, the numbers kept climbing. Initial estimates of $20 million quickly doubled, then tripled. Undeclared land, anonymous investments, and Nevada bank accounts pointed to a staggering truth. Hackman's estate was worth over $80 million, but the most shocking revelation was how carefully he had concealed it. His financial web was designed so that even those closest to him had no clear picture of his true wealth. The secrecy led to immediate turmoil. His 3 children, who had long felt distant from their father, assumed they would inherit the bulk of his estate. However, Hackman's intricate estate planning left nothing certain. Old family tensions, buried for decades, suddenly resurfaced as legal battles loomed. Who was meant to receive his fortune? Where had the money truly gone? From a struggling actor in the 1950s to one of Hollywood's highest-paid stars, Hackman's story was one of resilience and talent. Yet, his final act, a carefully orchestrated financial legacy, left more questions than answers. His departure didn't just mark the loss of a Hollywood legend, it sparked a battle over wealth, secrecy, and the true cost of a life lived in the shadows. Gene Hackman's departure from this world wasn't just the passing of a Hollywood legend. It was the spark that ignited a financial mystery and a family conflict that no one saw coming. With an estimated fortune of $80 million hidden investments and an intricate financial web, even those closest to him were stunned by what they uncovered. His death didn't just leave behind memories. It unraveled a story that was decades in the making. For years, Hackman had been a ghost in Hollywood, choosing a life of seclusion in Santa Fe over red carpets and public appearances. Unlike many retired actors, he avoided social media and the spotlight, preferring the quiet of his novels and long bike rides through the New Mexico landscape. Yet, while he lived modestly on the surface, behind the scenes, he was orchestrating a complex financial empire that no one expected. The first shock came when his will was revealed. A handwritten document from 2001 listed a relatively modest estate, a home in Santa Fe, a bank account in California, and a vintage Hudson Hornet. Officially, his assets were placed at less than $5 million, an astonishingly low sum for an actor who had dominated Hollywood for over 4 decades. However, when his family and legal team began investigating, the truth quickly unraveled. Hidden away in a locked storage unit, an old wooden chest contained documents that painted an entirely different picture. Real estate records, financial statements, anonymous stock holdings, and investments buried under layers of shell companies. It became clear that Hackman hadn't just accumulated wealth, he had carefully concealed it. By the time investigators pieced together the puzzle, the total value of his estate exceeded $80 million. The secrecy surrounding his fortune raised immediate questions. His children, Christopher, Elizabeth, and Leslie, had always assumed they would inherit the bulk of their father's wealth despite their complicated relationships. But as more details surfaced, their inheritance was anything but certain. The revelation of Hackman's hidden assets brought long-buried tensions back to the surface. Old wounds reopened, and unresolved emotions turned into conflicts over who was entitled to what. Christopher, Hackman's only son, had perhaps the most distant relationship with his father. As a child, he idolized him. But, as the years passed, admiration turned to resentment. Hackman's relentless pursuit of his career meant he was rarely present, missing milestones and leaving Christopher to grow up in his shadow. Unlike many Hollywood offspring, Christopher chose to step away from the limelight entirely. He refused interviews, avoided the industry, and distanced himself from his father's fame. By the time Hackman realized how much he had lost, it was too late. Their relationship never truly recovered. Elizabeth and Leslie had slightly different experiences. While they weren't as estranged as Christopher, they still felt the weight of their father's absence. Hackman made occasional attempts to bring them into his world, taking them to premieres and introducing them to Hollywood. But they remained spectators rather than participants. Elizabeth, the eldest, struggled the most with the expectations that came with being Gene Hackman's daughter, while Leslie, the youngest, managed to maintain the closest relationship with him in his later years. Even so, when Hackman passed, weeks had gone by since their last conversation. A shift occurred when Hackman married his second wife, Betsy Arakawa, in 1991. Betsy wasn't from Hollywood, and unlike his first marriage, she encouraged Hackman to reconnect with his children. For the first time in years, there were family gatherings, and Hackman embraced his role as a grandfather. He softened, realizing too late the price of his past choices. However, time has a way of making up for lost years, and despite his efforts, some wounds couldn't be healed. After his death, the biggest question remained, where had all the money gone, and who was meant to receive it? The financial records revealed that much of Hackman's wealth was tied to real estate. His Santa Fe mansion, where he spent his final years, was a private sanctuary spread across 12 acres of untouched land. Purchased in the 1980s, long before Santa Fe became a retreat for Hollywood's elite, the home was a testament to his desire for solitude. But the Santa Fe estate was only the beginning. Additional properties, undisclosed bank accounts, and investments hidden in layers of corporate structures showed that Hackman had carefully built his wealth in secrecy. With every new discovery, the mystery deepened. His children, expecting a straightforward inheritance, now found themselves entangled in a complex battle over assets they never even knew existed. Hackman's story is not just one of Hollywood's success, but of the personal cost that came with it. He spent a lifetime building an extraordinary career, but at the expense of personal connections. In the end, his wealth and legacy became as complicated as the relationships he left behind. His fortune, hidden from even those closest to him, ensured that even in death, Gene Hackman remained an enigma. One final role, one final mystery, and one last unresolved story. Gene Hackman wasn't just an actor, he was a master of reinvention. Even in his private life, he orchestrated his affairs with the precision of a well-scripted drama. One of the most intriguing aspects of his legacy was his hidden real estate empire. It wasn't just about the fortune he amassed, it was about how he managed to keep it all concealed, even from those closest to him. His Santa Fe mansion was a masterpiece of understated luxury, a place where he could escape from the limelight. Purchased in the 1980s, the home sat on 12 acres of pristine New Mexico land, offering breathtaking views of the Colorado mountains. Hackman personally oversaw the renovations, transforming the structure into an architectural marvel. He had a deep appreciation for aged beauty, deliberately designing the house to look lived in rather than new. Stamped tin ceilings, distressed, plaster walls, and exposed wooden beams all contributed to the illusion of a home that had stood the test of time. The estimated value of the property ranged, but Santa Fe was only the tip of the iceberg. Hackman's real estate portfolio stretched back decades. In the late 1970s, he purchased a Mediterranean-style villa in Montecito, California. The three-story estate embodied old Hollywood wealth, complete with a marble reception hall, grand staircase, and a swimming pool that overlooked the ocean. He sold the property in 1985 for $5.5 million, a hefty sum at the time, but a fraction of what it would be worth today. Then there was Pebble Beach. Few remembered that Hackman once owned a 4-acre property in this exclusive California enclave. The estate boasted 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, and sweeping coastal views. He quietly sold it in 1993, with no public record of the transaction amount. His children, unraveling the mystery of their father's wealth, began to question, was this just another real estate venture? Or part of a greater financial strategy? The deeper they dug, the more they uncovered. Hackman had purchased properties under shell companies, held undeclared land in Nevada, and invested in a luxury development in New Mexico. While he had spent his later years out of the spotlight, his financial maneuvers never stopped. Then came the real complication: inheritance. Hackman's children assumed they were the rightful heirs, but legal entanglements complicated the situation. The key issue was the order of death. Under New Mexico's Simultaneous Death Act, if 2 people pass within 120 hours of each other, the law treats them as if they died at the same time. This created a serious problem. If Hackman had passed first, his estate could have legally transferred to his wife, Betsy Arakawa. With no children of her own, her estate would then determine the distribution of assets, potentially cutting his children out completely. Authorities had no definitive timeline. Hackman was found in the mudroom, sunglasses nearby. Betsy was in the bathroom, surrounded by prescription bottles. Their dog, Zena, was found deceased in a closet, while 2 other dogs survived. A chilling detail that suggested their deaths had occurred days earlier. But how many days? That was the million-dollar question. With no clear answer, Hackman's estate was frozen. Christopher, Elizabeth, and Leslie, who had long felt distant from their father, now found themselves battling not just for an inheritance, but for clarity on a financial empire they never knew existed. The mystery of Hackman's wealth was no longer about the money. It was about uncovering the truth behind the life he had so carefully kept hidden. The inheritance battle surrounding Gene Hackman's estate was far more complicated than anyone could have predicted. While his children were aware of his known properties, such as the Santa Fe mansion, the Montecito estate he sold for $5.5 million in 1985, and the Pebble Beach property he owned until 1993, They soon discovered that their father's real estate empire was much larger than they had ever imagined. As they dug deeper, they uncovered hidden investments, properties registered under LLCs, commercial holdings, and offshore accounts. Some real estate transactions were so well concealed that they weren't even listed under Hackman's name, instead being tied to shell companies and business associates. The further they investigated, the clearer it became. Hackman had spent years quietly amassing a fortune far beyond what anyone knew, and now that wealth was at risk of slipping away. According to New Mexico law, if no valid will was found, the IOD state's intestacy laws would dictate how Hackman's estate was divided. Under these rules, his wife, Betsy Arakawa, would have been entitled to half of their community property and 1/4 of his separate assets, with the remainder split among his children. However, the Simultaneous Death Act complicated matters significantly. If Hackman and Betsy had passed away within 120 hours of each other, the law would treat them as if they had died at the same time. This meant that Hackman's estate would go directly to his named beneficiaries, if they existed, while Betsy's estate would be inherited by her family, assuming she had a will in place. But uncertainty loomed over the entire situation. There was no clear timeline of their deaths. Hackman was found in the mudroom, sunglasses nearby, while Betsy was discovered in the bathroom, surrounded by prescription bottles and a space heater. The door to their home was left ajar, and their dog, Zena, was found lifeless in a closet, while 2 other dogs remained alive. It was clear that whatever had happened had occurred days earlier, but without precise information, the estate remained in limbo. Authorities initially ruled out foul play, yet speculation persisted. If either spouse had played a role in the other's death, even accidentally, the Slayer rule would apply, preventing them from inheriting from one another. However, without security footage, witnesses, or concrete forensic evidence, proving anything was nearly impossible.